The Bulwark is one of the most popular of the 6 classes available to you in operations mode for Space Marine 2. But how do you build one out? What do you do? What do all of these things mean? In this video today, we're going to go over my personal build for my Bulwark at the max level. But I'm going to break this video up by going into the first 8 levels, the following 8 levels, so 8 to 16, and then the final 25 level, the final set of levels. What you can see though right here, as far as a too long didn't watch for the entire video, here's the perks I have selected. If you don't want to watch the video, by all means, just go ahead and pause right here, take a look at the game and see, okay, there's the perks he's got. I'll go try this build out. I don't want to waste your time. If that's all you wanted to know, please feel free to go ahead and shut the video down. But before you do, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if this video ends up helping you, as that does help me out in a huge way. And if you've not picked up the game, you can use my link down to Fanatical below in the description and the pinned comment. You will get a 12% discount and I get an 8% commission. So again, that it does go a huge way towards helping me out. But let's get started here on my favorite build for the Bulwark. So to open us up, let's talk about the first 8 levels of being a Bulwark, our first row of perks. And before we even jump into that, we have to talk about our chapter banner. So our chapter banner is going to replenish our squad members' armor. But in addition to that, placing it on the ground, as long as they're around you when you place it, they will get a full health bar of white contested health. Meaning, if they've got 2% health, you drop that banner and they get an execute, they will go to 100% health. It is a crucial way to stay alive. It keeps your character alive, it keeps your team members alive. At level 23, this morphs a little bit, but we'll talk about that once we get there. Now, the innate perk of being a Bulwark is that you get a health increase of 20%, so you have the highest health of any of the classes. It is what is going to make you a Bulwark, a tank, a moving veritable wall. So to go through these first initial perks, we have this one, Conviction. When your armor is fully depleted, you take 25% less damage for 5 seconds. Marching from level 1 to level 8, just take the top row. I think honestly the one I wouldn't even take is this one. It's probably not worth it if you're running into requisition problems, but by and large, you're just going to take the top row because it's all you have access to. And this is nice because our armor goes down, we get less health damage for 5 seconds. We'll move off of this one the second we get to level 9, but it's a good one to take in the meantime. When you block a range attack, enemies within a 10-meter radius take the damage instead. This is okay, but again, you're level 2, you just take it because you can. We're going to, again, move off this the second we get to level 10. Defensive advantage, a perfectly timed parry creates a shock area for 5 seconds. Cooldown is 30 seconds. You will use this the entirety of being a Bulwark because this allows us to overlap with tons of shock area, and shock is going to be the big focus of this build here. We are going to be able to have shock areas from this perk, the one in the signature column at the far right, and from using shock grenades. We will have so much capability to do a passive AoE damage and just simply sit in it with our shield up. It is massively advantageous, hence the word defensive advantage. But at this point, your Bulwark will start to come online a little bit more. Level 3 is where it starts to feel stronger. Prior to this, it's very punishing. So if you're feeling weak, that's okay. It's going to get easier. Next up, we have Unyielding Ceramite. The delay before armor begins to passively regenerate is reduced by 5 seconds. This is not good. It's just not great overall, so you gotta wait 20 seconds instead of 25 seconds, and since you can't stack this with anything else on this list, it's one you're gonna move off of as soon as you can. Concussive Force, Shield Bash deals more damage. This is nice because Shield Bash gives you a little bit of breathing room. And until you get to the latter portions of the tree, you can actually build a little bit here into Shield Bash to give you some really fun damage with it and a little bit more fun kind of characteristics. But Shield Bash is useful in the beginning, but we'll swap off of this later. Purity of Purpose is awesome here, so the banner deals a small amount of damage over time to enemies within its area of effect. I don't know why I said it's awesome. I thought this was the next one. It's not awesome. I only bought this one because I was doing this video. I wouldn't take this one if I had requisition problems, but at this point in the game, like I said, you can just not take it and be totally fine if you so wish. Then we have Rejuvenating Effect. This is the one that's awesome. So when the banner is activated, it revives incapacitated squad members within its area of effect. So the nice thing here is you have a buddy who's down, you just walk over them and basically plant the flag in their back and they'll stand right back up. It gives you a lot of functionality that you can use to stand someone up without having to really take the damage to do it. You're not a heavy, right, who has the Iron Halo that can sit and just take tons of range fire while they just stand someone back up. You can use this to really benefit from it. And lastly, we have one of the best ones here, emergency countermeasures as part of our signature. So now when your armor is depleted, a reserve shock grenade automatically detonates at your position. The cooldown is 2 minutes. That is what it is. They're all 2 minutes. But it's awesome here because you stack this with this. So between perfect parries, losing all of your armor, you've got double shock grenade capability. And we're going to lean into this more once we get into our next section. But that's our first 8 levels is the Bulwark. Let's now jump into another set of 8 levels. So moving into 9 to 16, we really get 2 very important talents back to back for the Bulwark that honestly almost complete the class. Really, it's what gives you a ton of power and a ton of survivability. So we're going to move off of our level 1 talent to this one, Intimidating Aura. A perfectly timed parry deals area of effect damage within a 5-meter radius. That is very strong. Now, a lot of people have said that this actually shuts off your gun strike. From my personal testing in playing in Ruthless and level 4 difficulty, I have not seen this shutting off gun strike. So reports have been kind of all over the place on this. What gun strike is if I get a perfect dodge, I can follow it up with a gun strike. If I do a perfect parry, I can follow it up with a gun strike. If I do a dodge attack with the, say, for example, what I'm using is the Power Fist Cannon Punch. It will knock down, like, say, a Termagon, and then I can do a gun strike on it. The gun strike gets you armor back. You want to constantly be doing them. But I don't think it shuts this off. So, Intimidating Aura, great, because every time you perfect parry, you are going to now set down a shock area, if it's not been 30 seconds, and you're also going to just passively deal area of effect damage every time you do it. So you might not be constantly setting down those shock auras because it's on that 30-second cooldown, but you're still going to be doing passive AoE damage every time you do it. So it's a great active ability, even though I just said the word passive. Now, Shock and Awe is really what sets a lot of this class off. Enemies in a shock area, any shock area, take 25% more damage. So you need to start focusing on shock grenades the second you get this perk, because now you are doing shock damage here, you're doing shock damage here, and now all that damage is increased by 25%. So you get these things working so fast together, and it just allows for such a good, huge power spike with the build that is very noticeable, very fast. Your shock area goes, oh, this is nice, to, oh, this is it. This is what I have. This is why I'm playing this class. You truly do turn into a Bulwark at this point. Everything else after this is going to be pretty much gravy and just making things better. You could stop at this point and be totally fine. Your character just gets better after this. It's awesome. So our next perk is Steel Within. When your health is less than 50%, you take 25% less health damage. Great for survivability, but we're focusing on that shock damage. We're not even going to touch anything anymore after this. Defensive advantage stays the entire game. Onto our team ability, we have a better one. Advanced Conditioning. Contested health fades 50%. Is it more slowly? I would think slower for all squad members. Isn't slowly a not an adjective, an adverb? Whatever. Who knows? Either way, this is nice because your banner gives everyone contested health. So that contested health now fades slower. This allows them to keep their health reserves faster, or get their health reserves up faster from an execute, a gun strike, or whatever the situation is, to try to get a little bit more online. I would definitely jump with this because this is just not that useful by comparison. I would absolutely do this. Your next one here, Rapid Regeneration. The banner restores armor 300% faster, but its duration is reduced for 5 seconds. I don't recommend this. Just stay with the shield bash damage increase, because the point of the banner isn't necessarily to purely restore armor. Yes, it does restore armor, but it already restores it quite quick. Having 5 less seconds on it is not going to make me... I think it's a 12-second banner. One of these... never mind. It's like a 12-15 second banner. Losing a good chunk of it for 300% armor regen isn't worth it, because again, the point is giving people contested health and getting them right back up. I don't want to have a shorter banner for the offset of having more armor when it already regenerates armor fast enough. It's just not worth it for me. Next up here is Merciless Resolve. After a shield bash, you do not lose control upon taking heavy hits and you cannot be knocked back for 5 seconds. So what I like about this is why this I've already said is not good, right? We're building into shield bash with concussive force, and this gives us a nice bit of tankability here, because a lot of things will give us this effect in a time where you don't really want it. Like, for example, the assault. Oh, you can charge up and not get knocked back. Well, cool. I'm just going to take the damage instead. That sucks. But with a bulwark, I can do a shield bash and keep holding down my button and not get knocked back from a sniper's shot, from a warrior jumping and lunging at me, from a Rubik Marine doing its warp attack on me. It really gives you it gives you 5 seconds of basically being able to stay there toe to toe with your shield and take infinite damage. It's really great. Well, infinite damage as long as your shield's up, you're not getting shot from behind, but still you get the point. So stick with Merciless Resolve. Next up, Glory Shield. All squad members within the banner's area of effect take 10% less damage. Nice, but they have to be in the area of effect, and you're going to be up close and personal a lot of the time. I prefer the option to just straight up stand someone up if they're downed. This is way more advantageous in a higher difficulty than this one, in my opinion. Our next one here for signature is Defensive Mastery. A perfectly timed parry instantly incapacitates a Majoris or Extremis level enemy. Majoris being any of the Tyranid Warriors or any of the Rubik Marines, and then Extremis being, for example here, the Scarab Occult Terminators, the Lesser Sorcerers, the Raveners, Lictors, and Zonethropes. It's nice, but again, we're focusing on the shock damage here, so it doesn't give us a direct advantage. And the nice thing though, or the one thing I don't like about this is, maybe you're dealing with a Majoris and you just incapacitated them and now you got attacked by a Lictor. Well, that sucks. I have to wait 2 minutes for this to come back online. It's too circumstantial for me to really benefit from it, and I find that as you get better with the pacing and the timing of your bulwark, you will find that this will be up more often than it will be down. Like, you won't be depleting your armor fast enough for this to really not help you out. You'll actually have a good amount of time in between engagements to have this constantly going for you. It's really solid. But that is our next 8 levels. Let's now close us off with the final 8. So to go now from 17 to our final level of 25, we actually don't have many good perks. You can see that I haven't even purchased the majority of the bottom row. Our first one though is going to be a dealer's choice. Forward momentum is pretty cool here. After a shield bash, melee damage is increased by 25% for 5 seconds. If you are really feeling that this is shutting off your gun strike, dealer's choice, go down here, use that, and have fun with it. Because until we get to 22, I think, we're building so much into shield bash, you might as well get the benefit here, right? So now you shield bash, you get 25% more damage. Your shield bash just does more damage, and you cannot be knocked back for the 5 seconds after you do a shield bash. So you can see there's a wombo combo here with those 3. But again, dealer's choice. After that, we've got scrambled targeting. If you are surrounded by 5 or more enemies, you take 20% less damage from range attacks. Don't get surrounded by 5 or more enemies. That is not going to be fun for you. You just always want to make sure your back's against a wall. You can roll out of it, whatever it is. If you're surrounded by gaunts, you need to make sure that you're trying to do something to stop it. And to be perfectly frank with you, using your shock capabilities, it's going to kill all the gaunts around you anyway, so you're probably not going to be surrounded by 5 or more enemies for long to get the big benefit of this. And you're just going to be mobile. You don't want to just stay there and be cool. I'm fine with all these enemies in front of me and 5, whatever. Next one is armor reinforcement. Non-finisher gun strikes also restore armor. This is a really good one because gun strikes restore armor if you finish someone. If you do not finish someone, this restores the armor. So it's a great way to keep your armor topped off. And you should be doing dodge attacks to move around as much as you can, because that allows for an auto gun strike on any gaunt you might hit, or Zangor for that matter. The problem is, though, it shuts off our perfectly timed shock area, so this is a dealer's choice. If you're not really good at doing that, or maybe you're doing a block weapon and you just want more gun strike capability, then by all means go with it. I am not, so it's a personal preference, but I can definitely see why you'd want to take this. Our next team one is all squad members take 20% less health damage from Terminus level enemies. I don't like this because this is too circumstantial. Extremis is a common thing to deal with. Terminus, it's a random chance you get 1 per map depending on your difficulty, right? So this is only going to benefit me from Terminus level enemies. So I'm just not okay with that. If you want to, by all means, go for it. I just think that I'd rather have the passive capability that helps out anytime I use a banner as active at all times being way better. Next up is Focused Strength. Now, Shield Bash knocks enemies back and makes them lose control for a longer period of time. This is very nice. It gives you a lot of really good breathing room. It's another big power spike for the build because you've got the ability to perfect parry, drop your shock, shield bash things if you need to, but really what you're going to do is you're going to do those perfect parries, hold your shield back, and then just step back into the shock. Let the enemies come into you. And you can keep them in that shock by standing on the outside rim and just bopping them back in with focused strength. It's really amazing. Now, in this case right here, you could take this, and now you have all the shield bash stuff active on the character for the most part. Your shield bash now will increase your melee. You've got this for getting immunity. You've got this for knocking enemies back. Just kind of depends on how you want to take it. Our next one, though, is going to change shield bash. So Invigorating Icon is very good. So remember, you drop your banner down, everyone gets contested health. Invigorating Icon means you drop your banner down, someone's not near you, they walk into your banner, and now they get contested health. So it gives you the ability to always have that contested health as a flex thing. So if you have a friend who wants to, hey, let's queue up an execute on something, you drop the banner, they get the execute, and your other buddy was able to jump in on that banner after the fact, get their contested health, and execute, and then get health back. That all sounded super complex and convoluted, but it creates much better team play by having this one. It's really, really, really good. Unfortunately, our last 2 perks are not too great. You have the Inspiration. All squad members within the banner of area effect deal 10% more damage. Again, these 2 are cool, right? They're kind of cut at the same cloth. I'd rather have the ability to just revive an incapacitated squad member. Having 10% more damage is not crucial enough to me to just being able to straight up stand someone up in a really pitched moment. Like maybe I'm the only one up and I'm right next to both friends. I can drop that banner and get both of them up. It's so, so crucial. And then our last level 25 perk, Armor Advance. If you have armor remaining, you do not lose control upon taking heavy hits and you cannot be knocked back. It's just not as advantageous as just outright doing more shock damage to things, which we've already leaned so heavily into with this build. I'm sure you could definitely make a build here where you stack a lot of these mechanics like this one, and you try to keep yourself from being knocked over. But in my personal experience, especially playing tons of Ruthless, being knocked back isn't necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes I've found that not being knocked back can actually be a disadvantage because your character is just going to take damage in those cases. They're not going to be knocked back where things can possibly miss them. You don't get follow-up ranged attacks because you're reeling. I find that being knocked back is not as terrible. But I will say though, being a bulwark, this is saying you can't lose control of your character. So if you are being a bulwark and you hold your block button down and a warrior jumps and does its slash attack at you, or you take a sniper shot, you will lose control of your character. These things prevent that. So factor those in if you want to just kind of pivot off of what I'm saying. I don't want to do what he's saying. I want to do this here. This guide should be meant to inspire you, not dictate the way you play the game. I want you to take from this guide a different way to approach, or maybe take little bits of it and go, oh, okay, I actually didn't know that's how that talent worked. I'm going to do that instead. I don't want you to look at this and go, I can only play this way because this is the only way this guy said to play. Nah, fuck that shit. You bought a game, you play exactly how you want. So we've gone over some talents. Let's talk about our weapon choices now. So let's talk about our range weapons first. And range weapon, you have a choice between the bolt pistol, which is the one weapon every single class can use, and the plasma pistol, which just bulwark and the heavy can use. I recommend the plasma pistol, but I'm going to show you both real quick so that we kind of stick on the notion of, talking about everything. So with the plasma or the bolt pistol, we have pretty much 2 variants as we progress through this. We have higher accuracy, lower accuracy, and higher magazine. I always choose higher magazine with every single variant of anything for the most part, because that's just going to be most important. So this has more power and higher accuracy. That's the kind of route I'm going to take, is always go with the higher mag. And my final one is the highest magazine capacity. The other ones don't, but they have more damage or better accuracy. Remember what accuracy does. It controls your recoil, which you can fight against, but it also is the spread of subsequent shots. So if you keep shooting, then their spread's going to be larger. So higher accuracy means your spread is tighter. That's a weird sentence. So I would go down over here to this one. Now for our perk tree, this is how I would set it up. I don't have every single variant unlocked, but for this, I've got spread decrease and then perfectly timed dodge. Max spread is decreased as well. I don't really care as much about these first two. I did it because I wanted, after a gun strike, the weapon is equipped weapon instantly reloads. It's already fast to reload a bolt pistol, but it's nice just to kind of have that online. And then go into after a gun strike, recoil is reduced by 35% for 5 seconds. So now we have a lot of gun strike mechanics here, right? So this is a perfectly timed dodge, max spread decrease. Well, we can do with a perfectly timed dodge a gun strike. Well, now it's going to reload my weapon. And now I'm going to do more damage and I'm going to have recoil, right? Reduction. And my max spread is already decreased. So I'm going to have a tighter shot the entire time, which is really nice. Then we're going to go damage increase 10%. I want more magazine capacity here, so this is going to help out. So mag size increased by 15%, and that's why we're taking the next two, which I don't have access to, but rapid health. So when your health is below 30%, killing 10 enemies in rapid succession restores health by 5%. That's okay. I think it's great. I've never really noticed those things really being the thing that keeps me alive. I just want more magazine capacity. Yeah, sure, I can really focus on headshots and going this route, but that's not my role in the party. It's not doing tons of bolt gun damage. It's doing lots of melee damage, holding the line, or using a plasma pistol to do even more. So the plasma pistol is my way to go, and I always, like I said, I'm just going to stick with the version that has the best magazine capacity. So we're starting at this one with our choice from Mastercrafted. There's this one or this one. I want the higher magazine capacity. Remember, with a plasma pistol, you can charge up the shots. It can shoot one at a time, or you charge the shot and it costs you 10 magazine capacity. So 10 overall reserve. So every shot is basically 10%. That's rough. So that's why we want that higher. Well, at this one, it's 10%. That's why we want the highest magazine capacity we can. And the nice thing too is that what I like about the plasma pistol, and I'm actually recording this live right now, I'm live streaming, and Will just pointed this out, is that a charged plasma pistol shot will interrupt anyone who is calling for reinforcements. That's huge. And a plasma pistol shot charged up can kill termagants, hormagaunts, and Zangors in a tight group. It can mulch through shields. It has way more application than a bolt pistol, which just shoots faster. And you don't have to worry about overheating. If you are shooting with the plasma pistol, just vent it by pressing your reload button. And lastly, for the final variant, I want that 120 magazine capacity. For our perk tree, we're going to go with fast venting, weapons cool 15% faster. I want, after killing 10 enemies in rapid succession, you deal 25% more damage. Don't really care, it's just to get to this. Damage from charged shot is increased by 10% because you will be charging it up a lot. Then damage radius of charged shot is increased by 5% too, helping us get a little bit more of that AoE wave clear when we shoot gaunts or what have you. Also blast radius, we're going to get that up another 5% here. We're going to jump down here to shots charged 20% faster, and then we're going to come down. I could have gone with this, 10% damage against terminus enemies, but it's too situational. I don't want that. So again, shots charged 20% faster, helping us shoot down anything that is calling for reinforcements. And then we're going to go into energy reserve, a plasma weapon increased by 20%. So we're going to go from 120 to increase that by an additional 20%. And charged shots from plasma weapon use 2 less energy. They use 8 rather than 10. That is absolutely lovely. Now, if you wanted to just go in a straight line, you could, which would give you perfectly timed dodges. You deal 25% more damage, and then fast venting, but I just went this route because I didn't want the situational from here, and that's the route I decided to take. I also wanted this blast radius and blast radius to give me a little bit more oomph. So those are our range weapons. Let's go into melee. So we talked about our range weapons. Let's now talk about our melee weapons. And of course, to start off, we will look at the chainsword. The chainsword is great. It is more of a single target, quote unquote, specialization as far as this focus goes, this one right here. But in my personal opinion, the best weapon, or the one that I enjoy using the most, is the power fist. The power sword is iconic, and it's probably a skill issue. I just don't like it as much because I was struggling to find the timing for parrying with the sword, and I found it on the fist. And I like the mobility of the fist more than I do for the other two weapons. So that's my personal choice. Please choose whatever you like more. I'm going to go through all three just as if I would be maining it, but I'm just going to let you know that up front. So with our chainsword, what we've got here are three different ways to kind of go about this. We've got all of our different variants. And with that, we have got the first one here. Let's jump into the next one. You can choose between balance or block. I'm just going to stick with balance because we are a bulwark. The point here is to parry. Now, if you are confident in your abilities as a parrier, as a bulwark in general or whatever, bulwark is the trickiest one to parry with. Their timing is a little funky because they share the block button with the parry button. And if you hold it down for just a smidge too long, you'll actually block rather than parry. So if you can hang out with balance, stick with balance if you can. You will get more damage or speed or cleaving potential, whatever it is. And we'll talk about that in the next variant. But I would use this variant over this one because block is not going to help us here. So balance right here gives us a damage of 9. If I want the fencing one, we actually get more attack, but the speed is significantly slower. This is a case where if you can, I would probably stick with the balance one. Fencing is going to increase your perfect parry window. Remember the difference between fencing, balance, and block. Fencing has an increased chance to perfect parry. And when you perfect parry something, you can follow it up with a gun strike. Just simply parrying something negates the damage. Parrying something negates the damage and gives like a little bit of a knockback. It gives you a little bit of breathing room. Block, you do not get a gun strike. You can parry, quote unquote, but it just negates the damage. It blocks it and it does not give any knockback to anything. So your trade-off here is for a block weapon, you're going to have a faster speed. So that's the trade-off in this thing. I would just go with balance here. The fencing weapon is just too slow. I don't like how slow that is. If you purely use it to parry, then you're fine, but you're going to want to do some swinging. Now for our last one, I'm just going to go with the fencing one here because it's got a great speed and it's got very high damage. The other ones here are just fine if you want to go with them, but that's how we've gone. Now for our perk tree here, I have not gone with the very end of this. We're going to go at the top with when you are at full armor, melee damage is increased by 10%. Followed by enemies hit by your stomp, deal 30% less damage for 4 seconds. This gets better as we go on. Perpetual strength for 5% melee damage. Don't take this yet. Come back for this one. We're going to skip ahead to reverberating impact. Stomp area of effect radius increases by 50%. So now these two work in conjunction, right? You're going to debuff things and now at a 50% radius increase. Melee damage against chaos enemies is increased by 10%, which is always lovely. They're going to be the hardest enemies you're going to deal with, in my opinion. And then we have while performing a light combo, you take 15% less range damage. I like that, gives us a little bit more survivability. Then the last one we're going to take in the forward progression is trampling stride. After performing a stomp, hold the attack button to perform an additional stomp. Stomp, I think, is done at 2 lights and 1 heavy. I can't remember the combo off the top of my head, and I can't see it in this menu. So this allows you to couple with our previous 2 perks. So we're now going to be able to increase our stomp radius. We're going to be able to stomp twice, and we're going to debuff with our stomp. Then, with our next 2 mastery points, I would pick up melee damage and then more damage to the Tyranids. Overall, I think a better approach than trying to get these latter 2, in my opinion. Now for the Power Fist, my favorite one of the bunch, I stick with the balance all the way up until the last one. So you've got this option here, I go with the balance. Then this option here, I go with the balance again because the fencing one, I drop my speed pretty drastically, and I don't like that. So I would go here with the balance, stick with that, try to get the timing down, and then once you jump into the final glove, go with the fencing. You lose cleave potential, but you get such a huge increase to your speed and power that you're just going to be fisting things left and right. I said what I said, I'm going to stick with it. Now for your perk tree, the entire bottom row, it's easy. Melee damage 5%. Heavy attack prep time is reduced by 30%, applies to thrust those abilities. So it's easier to charge up to full power if you want to. We're just trying to use it to get ahead here. So melee damage increased by 5%. When your health is below 30%, a successful back fist or thrust jab 2 restores 1 armor segment, which is cool. 10% more damage to Tyranids, and then back fist and thrust jab 2 as well give us an area effect increase by 50. So we're focusing on back fist and thrust jab 2 in our combo list, which I believe is thrust jab. I think is just the hold down, and then back fist I think is light hold down. Again, you press start in the game, you'll see your whole combo list. But this is the big one. The reason I even went down this lower route. Switches thrust jab and ground shake. Or I'm sorry, with ground shake. Thrust jab 1, not thrust jab 2, just so you know. Slam the ground to deal area effect damage in a 10-meter radius. It's just a cool AoE that you can do to give yourself some breathing room outside of all the many things that you can do to give yourself breathing room. Then we have a Minoris Slayer here, so you can 10% or 20% more damage to Minoris enemies, which is all of your Gaunts and your Zangors. And lastly, Cannon Punch deals 50% more damage. Cannon Punch is your dodge attack, and you'll be using this so much with the Power Fist. You will absolutely love it. For our Power Sword versions, we're going to focus here on our fencing one. So it starts with balance, then just kind of go with fencing. That's, I think, the big benefit of using the Power Sword is the fencing capability. And since you can go with a speed mode or a power mode, I don't look at the lower speed as too much of a detractor here. So I would go with this one. And then for our last one over here, where is it? I would go with... Oh, we don't have a... I thought we had a fencing one over here. But oh, there it is. That's right. This is also one of the coolest looking ones anyway, right? You don't have as much cleaving potential, but you can just go into the mode that has more cleaving potential, so who gives a shit? This is going to give you tons of speed and tons of strength. You will love this Power Sword. Now for our perk tree, we're going to stick to the bottom and go Perpetual Strength for melee damage, Master of Defense. So after switching sword combat style, you take 20% less range damage for 5 seconds. Remember, if you attack, delay, and then attack again, it will switch your combat style. So you can do this on mid flow once you really get good at it. More melee damage here for 5% more. And then while in Power Whirl stance, which is what you're going to probably stick in with this, you do not lose control upon taking heavy hits. So Power Whirl stance is your power mode when the blade's all lit up and when your attacks are big, huge swipes. So while you're doing that, you're just not going to be knocked back. It gives you so much durability as a Power Sword user, which is crucial. Then into this Power Sword style, or that style in specific we were just talking about, now increases its length from 3 to 4. Melee damage against Tyranids 10%. And furthermore, after killing 10 enemies in rapid succession with a light combo, you do not lose control upon taking heavy hits, and you cannot be knocked back for 5 seconds. Absolutely ace there, right? We just get a lot more benefit of just reaping through tons of small little things. Cutting Edge, Power Rake deals 50% more damage. This is just really to kind of get us over to here. Melee damage against Extremist level, 15% higher. And we're going to stop there. Melee damage against Minoris level enemies increased by 20%. And we're going to take that last point and put it over here. So that melee damage is increased by 5% now. So we get a total of 15% increase to our melee damage as a flat bonus. It's a real good way to approach the Power Sword, in my opinion. I don't like this last one. Power style attack restores 100% more contested health. Contested health for me is used by killing things with a gun strike or getting an execute. The small amounts that I can recover here and there with my melee weapon, I think are just not truly the way to approach contested health, because it just is not, it's too high of a risk for too little of a reward in the highest difficulties. If you keep dedicating or committing yourself to melee with a lot of contested health, rather than simply doing a dodge attack, creating a gun strike, killing that thing with the gun strike, you're missing out. The gun strike guarantees that health back, and it even gives you some armor. It's a better way to approach it than just trying to melee the health back. Definitely recommend it that way. So those are your melee weapons. Let's now talk about some gameplay and how to approach the Bulwark. Now we've talked about talents, we've talked about weapons, we've talked about pretty much everything. How do you really play the Bulwark? How do you really master this class? And it is a very tricky one when you first start off. You think that you're going to be a Bulwark. You think you're going to be a tank. You think you're going to be able to hold the line. But when you first start off, you'll notice that you just cannot. You don't have the talents online. You don't have the damage from your melee weapons. And you probably aren't really having your range weapons leveled up, unless you're coming to this class after the fact. Then you're going to have a high level chainsword or a high level bolt pistol, probably both to take advantage of. So you have to consider those things. But there are 4 big things that make the Bulwark particularly strong. The first one I want to talk about is Banner. Banner is you are basically the apothecary with that banner. because you can plant the banner down and it gives people that white health, that contested health, and then they can do an execute and fully recover. If you're playing with your friends and you're really low, as you're leaving an area or coming into a new area, set up those banner kills. Hey, you know what? I've got like 10% health. Let me get a banner kill. Okay, cool. Let's get this warrior down. Okay, they're ready to go. Drop the banner right as they're doing the execute. They'll finish the execute and be back at full health. It is so crucial because it keeps the team alive. And you can use it in a pinch on yourself, use it in a pinch when you're trying to defend an objective, like the generator on Inferno or any of the other situations where you're trying to just simply hold something. That banner is going to be the thing that wins the game for you 9 times out of 10. The Bulwark, honestly, I think is such a hard carry in this game in PvE that it just opens up such a fun amount of gameplay for the other classes. Now, another big portion of the Bulwark is going to be parry. You have to master parry. And like I said, it is one of the hardest and trickiest things to do as a Bulwark. You're going to be constantly having to do it. And with the parry button and the block button sharing a button, it's very easy for you to hold the button down too long and you just end up blocking it, which isn't terrible, but we've seen how so much of the Bulwark triggers off of those perfect parries, right? Especially the talent builds we have set up. Boom, it drops a shock area. That shock area is awesome. Now, when you do that, you simply hold block, step back, things will come into the shock area and they'll just get minced up. You'll hear the tick, 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 tick of them taking the damage from the shock area. One thing to note though, we talked about the banner executions. If you drop that shock area and you want to get a banner execution with your battle brother, you don't want to do it when they're in that shock area. They'll probably die by the time that execute's able to actually get going. So just be mindful of those things. You'll end up kind of like falling on your own sword there. Now, another thing, and a lesser portion of the class, but another one is your plasma pistol. Plasma pistol is really good at disrupting anytime there's callouts for reinforcements. And in the latter difficulties, you're just going to see that that's going to be so punishing. Those callouts can really rip and grip you. Like you can just let one of those go through and that can be the game on Ruthless. So the nice thing about the plasma is it gives you the ability to chunk apart big amounts of damage. I almost said big chunks of damage. That's a repeating word. Big amounts of damage against any of your Majoris or Extremist things, but being able to disrupt those small little waves coming at you, charge it up, launch it, boom, there's a bunch of dead Zangors or Gaunts. You launch it into a warrior that's calling for help, that's shut down, or a Rubric Marine that's shut down. It's a real great capability. It gives you a lot of really fun range potential in a class that's not focused on range. And the last and probably most important thing outside of the banner, of course, with the Bulwark is you need to know that this is a class that is mobile. Even though you have a shield, sure, you're not the Vanguard or the Assault, right? But you got to be fast on your toes. You got to be doing those dodge strikes. You got to be doing those gun strikes that give you armor back and open up chances for you to get out of sticky situations. You got to use your shield bash to create some room for yourself. You have to use those parries to create some room for yourself to kill things, but also to help give you perfect parries for gun strikes to get that armor back. The biggest thing here is that I'm going to use the example of Power Fist because that's what you're seeing and that's what I use. Power Fist allows me to be very mobile and I can smash things apart because it has tons of cleave. I can reap through stuff and it allows me to disrupt. And if I can disrupt, then I'm okay kind of being relatively at the forefront of combat. I don't want to be full surround, right? Full surround, I'm just going to get completely like gorilla pounded into the ground. That's not going to be fun. But being able to to use my mobility and jump around, dodge through stuff, use my shield, but then use that shield to create openings for myself is really the way to play this game. Or not even just this class, but the game, but also the class, because this class requires you to not just simply hold your shield and stay there. You read the books on all the Space Marines. Space Marines don't just sit there and take damage unblinking. They are super fast. They move around. They're mobile. You read any of the stuff about them fighting Tyranids even. It's like, oh, they're perceptive. Their moves were imperceptive to the human eye, making it sound like Dragon Ball Z. But that's the way you're supposed to play this class. You're supposed to have these awesome flow states where you get a great parry, a cool dodge, it drops a shock area, you gun strike something. You're just constantly moving around and being able to bring support to your battle brothers as needed with a banner, with a perfect parry, with a dodge, with a, not with a dodge, with a block, whatever the situation is. And remember that shield, if you're sprinting, the sprinting turns the shield on. You don't have to hold it down when you're sprinting. You just sprint. that shield is going to just allow anyone behind you to be okay. They're not going to be taking those hits. So that's a real great portion of this as well. Using that shield to your advantage, holding it down, just kind of taking damage for yourself while you move into position. That is the Bulwark in a nutshell. And I think once you master a lot of this stuff, you too will find that the Bulwark is a very indomitable class. It just takes time. It takes a lot of time, just like everything else does in this game, because the game is not easy. So at that, it brings our video here to a close. So hopefully this helps you out in wrapping your brain around how to approach Bulwark. Hopefully this gives you some cool talent ideas or some cool perk tree ideas or different versions to approach with all the different melee and range weapons for this class. It's a great class. It's very rewarding, but it's a class that is truly about timing more than any of the other classes. It's so forgiving to dodge or parry with every other class. It is not that way here with the Bulwark. And it really is going to force you to maybe play with fencing weapons. And as you get better, you push into balance weapons. I would never really touch the block weapons with the with the Bulwark. I would always stick to balance and fencing. And you're going to find that once you get that really good pacing down and timing down with this character, you are going to feel so awesome. I said the word before, but the flow state that you get from getting a parry, a dodge, a gun strike, and all these things in fluid motion. Like I said, I've been playing I keep saying like I said, but I've been playing Warhammer for 20 plus years. It truly feels like the book comes alive when you get in those really cool moments. So it's a class that's extremely rewarding, but very punishing. Just stick with it, slam your head against the wall a couple times, and you'll click through. And if you are someone that plays Bulwark a ton, and there's some things that I forgot to mention, go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. Maybe you're going to say, hey, you know what? You're using the sword all wrong. Go the top row, go with these perks. This is the way. This is the way. Go ahead and let it be known. Make sure there's as much information disseminated out to the people as possible. It helps people get better at the game. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.